Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the BeBall Jones podcast. Today is another beautiful day, everybody, because I have another interview for you guys. So, as you guys know, I'm big on the mental and I'm big on the mindset, especially with being Mental Health Awareness Month. So, I had to bring you another professional that really knows and understands the psychology of people. I talk about it a little bit, and I think I know a little something. So, hopefully, I don't sound too bad to y'all. But I got an actual professional. Like, people come to him, pay him money, be like, hey, help me think a little bit better and process things in a different way. I know a little bit about it, but he's professional because he gets paid to do it. I do it like because I like it. But introduce you guys to Greg Graber.
Hey there. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. How about you?
I'm good. I appreciate you having me.
I'm glad you're coming on, man. So give the people a little bit of introduction about more about who you are and what you do exactly.
Yeah, basically I'm a mental performance coach and consultant. So for whatever reason, my niche over the last dozen years or so has been working with NCAA Division I basketball teams. And basically we work on their mindset. We get them to focus, to de-stress, all that kind of good stuff. Exactly what you were alluding to at the beginning of the introduction there.
So when it comes to the teams you work with, can you name a few of the teams that you've been able to be a part of?
Yeah, over the years, I've probably worked with anywhere from, I would guess, I haven't added it up, I probably need to, 20 to 25 different teams. Everyone from LSU to Marquette to VCU. I'm here in Memphis, so I work with Penny Hardaway and his guys. I've worked with the Grizzlies before in the NBA. So it's interesting. Typically, during a season, I'll work with a half a dozen teams, and a contract will typically go from June to March. So I'm busy. I'm on the road a lot during those months. So right now is a little bit of my downtime. I'm enjoying it.
That sounds pretty good, man. So you talked about being a coach that helps people focus. What do you think is the biggest distraction that you see from athletes?
That's a great question. There are so many different answers depending on the individual. So I think a big part of it is now we live in this accelerated culture where most of us expect instant gratification. And it's interesting. This isn't a pro or con about the transfer portal, but that's kind of symbolic of that. You know, you've got a lot of guys now that have played on 3 or 4 different teams. And that's not necessarily a judgment. But, you know, in the old days, you were on a team and you'd have to be on that team for 4 years or sit out a year. So from a mental perspective, you kind of built or cultivated mental resilience. It was definitely a growth mindset. I don't see this in a lot of the guys that I work with, but it would seem that, you know, a lot of guys who play now, they don't get their way, they don't get their playing time. They make their mind up early that they're going to get in the portal and transfer early and go to another school. So I see that being sort of a distraction. I also see a lot of players with people in their ears that get in their heads a lot. And I would want to think maybe I'm naive. Most of the time it's well-intentioned. It's people that care about them. Unfortunately, also sometimes it's people that also want a piece of them if they hit it big. So I think a lot of it is too, social media is a big distraction. We're all on it. I mean, I get business from it. I know you do too. You get a lot of followers from it. Basically, we live in a world of distraction now. And having the ability to sustain a level of focus is really a superpower. If you think about it, not many people can do that anymore. I think the average American attention span, they say, is like 8 seconds now. So we can willfully sustain our attention on something for about 8 seconds most of the time before we can break thought. And in the year 2000, they say it was 12 seconds. So it's gone from 12 seconds in the year 2000 down to 8 seconds. I think they did the experiment or the research in 2015. So that attention span now is like this. So it's unfortunate. It's good for guys like me that make a living teaching this stuff, obviously. I don't want to say it's good for business, but I guess it is.
Yeah. So you spoke about social media. Do you feel like that's probably the biggest factor in what has been a distraction factor? Like, do you think the social media age and the internet and everything is probably the biggest factor in the lack of attention span or the
Yeah.
decrease in it?
I don't know about biggest, but it's definitely a major contributing factor to it. I think it's probably hard to delineate what's the biggest, what's the smallest, like the percentage of it. But, I'll give you an example. Even for an older guy like me, I'm in my 50s, right? Greatest thing in the world to me is Uber Eats. My wife is out of town. I want to get something to eat. I get what I want, when I want it, immediately delivered to my doorstep. It's instant gratification. When I was a kid, not to sound like that old grandpops sitting on his front porch, like, get off my lawn. But when I was a kid, on TV, we had 3 stations, right? And that was it. No cable TV. Kids now, that's a foreign concept. They can stream what they want, and I do it too. They can stream what they want when they want it and watch it immediately. It's just the whole world has shifted. I don't think it's necessarily a good or bad thing. From a focus perspective, it might be a bad thing. Overall, though, I'm definitely not anti-technology, but I do think it's a major contributing factor. I had a speaker come out. I do, when I'm in town, a weekly session for some students in Memphis, and she spoke about social media and being on our phones and sort of having more mindful usage of it. And she had us do an experiment where we took our phones and we looked at the screen time on our iPhones. I was horrified to see how much time I spend on my phone. And I lecture on this stuff and I teach this stuff and work with athletes and high performers in the corporate world and academians. But it's really interesting.
Yeah, I battle with that too. But I try to take into account, am I being productive with my time on my phone?
Yeah.
So I might be on 10 hours, but 6 of those hours were Instagram, trying to DM people, or I'm posting content, learning, scrolling through content, trying to learn or something. So I try to take them into account, but I still think sometimes that it's still there's a negative to it. I'm not saying it's negative overall, but it's a negative to it because there's a level of distraction that comes with it. So I might be on my phone for, like you said, let's say 8 minutes straight, but the next 2 minutes I'm just, freelancing through whatever. And then, okay, I'm back focused now. But how much of that time is dedicated to actually being intentional, being focused? So I wrestle with how much of it is good and how much is it bad. But in your opinion, what do you feel like that balance is for like the average athlete? Do you think some of it
Yeah,
is
that's a
good
great
and bad?
question. That's a great question. I'm not really sure about that, but what I would say is if we're intentional about our usage, like it sounds like you're very intentional and you put thought into it. And for the most part, you go on, you do what you want, you maybe do a little bit of scrolling for fun or whatever, and then you get off. I think that's fine. Like,
Hmm.
I'm saying that, but this is my office. Like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like all the coaches I work with, all these college and pro coaches and athletes, we do stuff over the phone. Any business I get is through my phone, so I know it. But there's a difference between being intentional and mindful about it and using it for specific purposes or just scrolling to numb your emotions. Like a lot of people just do that, and it's a time suck. And it's a waste of time. It's almost an emotional regulation thing. Instead of like feeling or thinking or reflecting or contemplating or doing something, if I don't want to do it, I can pick up my phone and get lost on Twitter or Instagram forever and look at things that I'm interested in, like basketball and soccer, whatever it is. But I do think, just being mindful and think about it, like anything else in life, I think it's all in moderation. Whatever that is, depends on the individual. But if it is inhibiting you or preventing you from doing something that you need to do, if it's affecting what you need to get done, then it's a problem.
Mm.
You know,
I think that's the good differentiating factor, or the key piece to look at to say, I'm on here for 10 hours, but it's a productive 9.5, 10 hours versus just scrolling through TikTok and you done wasted half your day just,
Yeah, I
look.
mean, we can all get on TikTok and just look at girls and basketball stuff, right? We love that. But I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, what do we have for it, right? You're absolutely right. Yeah.
So another thing I think about when it comes to social media, which, I'm impacted by it too. I recently just got back on social media because of this, but it's the comparison game. And so for athletes, you might see the rankings of this player across the country and he's getting all the highlights. Like when Zion, when he was in high school, he was everywhere. So what can we do about that to where we're on it and we're being effective, but not being too impacted by the negative side of the comparison game?
That's a tough one if you think about it, because, I know you've heard that saying before that comparison is the thief of joy.
Hmm.
And especially on Instagram, it's hard. It's hard for guys that play or guys that coach, because then they end up comparing themselves with others. It's hard, and we've all heard of females, males too, but primarily females with body image issues. They're looking at, photos of supermodels that were filtered or whatever. It's difficult to do that. I just think a lot of times for that specific or those specific reasons, less is more. Like the less time you can spend on that, and again, being more intentional about what you want to do on it is the thing. It's interesting though. I've worked with kids. I say kids, college players who I've had close relationships to, and we have good communication. But then I see on Twitter maybe that they're in the transfer portal and something I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it smacks you in so many different ways.
Hmm.
It can. But
So do
I've
you?
found, but I've established great relationships with people like you on it too. So it has a myriad of positive benefits as well. I've met some great people on it who do things similar to what I do, or we have similar interest, or we share resources and information like what you're doing now. So for all the perceived negatives, there's many perceived positives as well.
Yeah, that's something I've come to think about it with it too, because you hear so many times that social media is negative and all the technology and the new AI, everything is so negative, but nothing is inherently negative. For the most part, it's probably the human being using it being negative on it. Because, like you said, we're both on Instagram and whatever else. It's positivity being able to connect with somebody like you, but on the next scroll, it can be a very toxic and negative thing. So I think that we have to remember that social media is neither negative nor positive. It's just what we make of it. So
I
how can we?
agree. I agree.
So how can we do a better job of making it more of a positive environment for us?
I think it all starts with self-awareness, just having that self-awareness before you get on it. And, I'm big into mindfulness and meditation. I teach this kind of stuff. It's in the toolbox of the mental performance tools that I teach athletes and sort of high performers. But being self-aware and thinking about what you want to do on it and what you don't want to do on it, and remind yourself from time to time.
Mm. So do you think that I'm even gonna ask that because I think about when I was a kid, I didn't have like a goal of what to do on social media. I was just on there to be on there like the average kid. But what could a kid do to say, this is my goal of social media, this is what I want to be on here for? Like how could they apply this?
Yeah, one of the things is to have what I was talking about, where you can gauge on your iPhone screen time. Look at how long you're on there every day, and if it's a copious amount of hours, ask yourself, could I be accomplishing other things that are important to me during that time? Do I often feel like I don't have enough time to get done with homework, my basketball training, everything that I have to do? And if the answer is yes, then look at the time on that, and you're going to have enough time. You can cut some of that out, because kids aren't like you and me
Mhm.
necessarily. They're not making a living on this. It's not really their livelihoods. Another thing is, it goes back to parenting too. Parents they should monitor that somewhat as well. It's not really developmentally appropriate for kids with a developing brain to be on there all the time. There's all kinds of research and recommendations about how much you should and shouldn't be on it for different age. It varies from different age levels.
So how much would you put on the parents to monitor that? Like, I know the kids have to take accountability for it, but how much would you say goes on the parent? I know they vary from age to age, but just a baseline idea of like
A big amount. I don't know. It's hard to arbitrarily put a percentage on it, but I put a lot of the responsibility on the parents too. Just like they monitor how much their teenage child can drive the car, there's no difference.
Look, let's be serious, man. Stop playing around. All right. You didn't got too comfortable. You didn't got relaxed. You forgot that you still got people behind you chasing you right now. You still got people to catch up to. You think just because you won a championship or you had a pretty good game last time that you can relax now. We ain't gonna write none of that stuff. Your goal right now is to look at how you were yesterday. Look at the player you were last night. Figure out how to be better than that person. Right now is you versus you. Your goal right now is to make progress than the person that you were last night. The person that you were yesterday. The person this week should be the person from last week. The person this month should be the person from last month. On the court and off the court. Personal development too. So right now, progress is the only goal. We ain't worried about what other people got going on. Focus on progress. It's you versus you. It's me versus me. So that right there is your mission. That's your goal. I don't care about who say the best in state is. I don't care about any of that. Your goal right now is to be better than you were yesterday. I don't care if you struggling to make the team. I don't care if you the last player they're looking at to make the team. We ain't worried about none of that. Your goal right now is to be better than you were yesterday. I don't care if you're the number one player in the nation. Could care less. Your goal right now is to be better than you were yesterday. So go ahead and get you one of these. Because you need that reminder. Because you got too comfortable. That's the issue. You got too comfortable. This can't get you comfortable right here. So go ahead, get you a reminder. Get you like a flag hanging as a reminder to say progress is on the goal. How do you feel about the parents making social media pages for the kids?
Ooh, man. We don't want to open that up. I mean, I had, my background, I'm an educator by trade. So my background is in social emotional learning, educational psychology, mindfulness. Years ago, I was a middle school principal. And I started dabbling in this, and then I started doing this more full time. But I remember there would be announcements for middle school kids, like their top 8 schools that they're looking at for 7th or 8th grade or something like that. It's horrific. First of all, nobody cares. No one cares. It's a turnoff. For future coaches to see that, high school coaches, college coaches, it's a turnoff. It means the kid's going to be a pain in the ass. And certainly the parent is. I mean, that's just my thing. I'm in Memphis, which is, we're biased. This is really a mecca of basketball here. Great talent, hotbed of basketball, native Memphian. I've seen this so much. You can look at Ja Morant with the Grizzlies and his dad's involvement in some of that. I won't comment any further on that, but it goes on at all levels. And at some point, you have to teach your child to be responsible, self-sufficient, and know that the world doesn't revolve around him or her, and that basketball is a team sport. And it shouldn't be about ego gratification for parents. Most parents are great. I would say 99% of most parents are wonderful. And even a lot of the ones that mess up, their intentions are in the right place. They love their kids more than anything in the world. But it's the parent sometimes with good intentions who also maybe subconsciously not thinking about it tries to live vicariously through his or her kid. That's where it gets messy. But I'm tight with a lot of college coaches, all these teams that I work with. Sadly, it doesn't stop. You've got 22, 23-year-old men on these big-time college programs and some of their parents are just a pain, just like in middle school. It's interesting. I'd say most aren't. Again, most are great, but you got some. And if they make it to the pros, it's gonna be cut off abruptly.
Mm. So, can you give me a do you have a story or situation that kind of involves that where a parent got a little too involved and it was like, all right, mom, dad, let's pull back a little bit here.
Oh yeah, I don't want to get into a specific one because people could probably figure some of these out because I named some of the teams I work with. I don't want to be blackballed, but there's been quite a few where coaches have had heart to heart with the parents. It's like this just isn't working. But on the flip side of that, to be fair, sometimes the parents are made promises about playing time and whatever from some of these coaches. And once you cross that line, you're kind of beholden to them. So I've seen it work both ways. I've seen it initiated by the parent or initiated sometimes by coaches.
So, have you ever seen like a parent's performance, I guess you could say, impacted their child's playing time or the situation with the team?
No, not really, because the level that I work on, with these kind of big time programs, it's the coach isn't going to jeopardize holding one of the best players out based on something that the parents did. But because they have the pressure to win is enormous with these programs. But what I would say, I've seen some coaches back off in the recruiting process because a parent was a pain. I've seen that quite a few times.
Okay. I think that's interesting, man, because a lot of parents, like you said, they have good intentions and they want a good outcome, but the input that they have of trying to get that outcome is the negative part, so to speak. So,
oh yeah, I've seen quite a few act a fool at games, yelling at the coach, like trying to call plays or getting other people to root against the coach for not giving their kid enough minutes, and just it's crazy. But I get it, man. The other side, I get it. I don't think that's justified, that kind of behavior. But again, they just love their kids so much. It's interesting, And we were just talking a little bit ago about the transfer portal. With that phenomenon now, you can't afford. Coaches have to really walk a tightrope, keeping those players and parents happy. Every coach I know, all these guys are recruiting their own roster every year. It never stops. Used to be they'd recruit their roster. They were good for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from junior colleges up to the highest of majors, it's crazy. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think that's like you said, the instant gratification. I want to go back to the focus topic we were talking about earlier. I think, like you said, the instant gratification is one of the major impacts of the lack of focus. Because, like you said,
yeah,
we
without
we have the ability to get stuff now. So when stuff doesn't happen as instantly as we want, it bothers us. But how do we learn to separate Uber Eats or DoorDash being in 5 minutes versus the work ethic and the trial period of sucking at basketball for a period of time to actually reap the rewards of my work, actually?
That's the $1 million question right now. And you're absolutely right. How do we go from DoorDash, Uber Eats, Netflix, we want what we want, we get it when we want it, how we want it immediately, to you need to kind of suck at this for a while to get good. It's tough. One of the things that we try to instill in my sessions to players is to have a growth mindset. And I know you saw that quote from Giannis, right, in the media the other day. They asked him about the Bucks being out of it now. Is the season a failure? And he said, no, it's definitely not a failure. We're getting better every day. That's kind of the mindset that you have to get better. But unfortunately, all these different forces now in modern society kind of work against it.
Hmm.
I had kids in private sessions tell me in November or December during the basketball season, the beginning of the basketball season, I'm not getting the minutes that I promised or that I was promised, or I'm not getting the minutes that I deserve. I think I'm out of here next season. I mean, I don't have the answer how, other than just continuing to tell them that you're only going to get better if you fail some too. Failure is such an important but underestimated part of the process. One, we go to great lengths to protect ourselves from failing. And two, we're talking about the parents. The parents want to sort of metaphorically wrap us in bubble tape where we don't get any scrapes, right? But if you think about it in life, we learn more from our failures than our successes. And we grow more from those failures than the successes. It's interesting. I'm working with a soccer team here in Memphis. I'm a big soccer guy. I love it. Arsenal's the greatest. Um, they were undefeated for 10 games. No one had scored a goal against them in 10 games.
Mm.
And I kept telling them, I want you guys to have some adversity. And they kept looking at me. I want someone to really give us a hard time. I don't want to say beat you guys, but, and then they had someone that beat them. And it's been the best thing for them as far as bouncing back. If you're not willing to sort of get out of your comfort zone and risk failure, you're not going to build grit and resilience that makes you that much better,
So, do you agree with what Giannis was saying about it not being a failure?
without a doubt.
Hmm.
There's a difference between it not being a failure and it not being the way that they wanted it to go. But it's definitely not a failure. I mean, the Bucks had a winning season, right?
Hmm.
And the Bucks made the playoffs and then got knocked out, right? Were they first round or I don't remember what round.
First round.
Yeah. So a lot of teams don't make the playoffs. And I'm not talking about being happy with that and letting that breed complacency at all. I'm not, because someone's going to hear what I'm saying and think, oh, that just makes them mediocre. Don't be happy with it, but don't see it as a failure either. I tell every athlete after every game, win or lose, when you go back to your home, unpack that game mentally. Compartmentalize everything that you did and then break it down in your mind or even write it down on a piece of paper. What I did well and what I could have done better.
Hmm.
And do that every time and be really critical with yourself. And that's going to help facilitate a growth mindset, doing that. Instead of seeing everything as life or death or win or lose. It's the kids that do that. They're going to be so up and down because, when you play this game, it's so situational. There are a lot of variables you can't control. Giannis couldn't control every variable during the season and in that first round of the playoffs. He can't control what other players do. He can't control a lot what the other team does, what the refs do. So we always tell players, control what you can control and try to let go of the rest. It's all you can do. If you gave it your best shot and you left it on the court, I don't see it as a failure at all.
I've been wrestling with that. Um, so there's like the black and white side, which is results based business that basketball is, and of course it's championship or you lost. And being the caliber of the team that Giannis was on is a failure. But because I actually did a video on this, so the definition of failure is lack of success, which is obvious. But then the other definition was not achieving a goal or hitting something like that. Your goal is to do this and you don't reach this goal, and so there is a level of success for the Kings. They got out the first round, but they didn't have championship aspirations, so their season was a success. Versus the Bucks, who had the exact same outcome, but their goal was a little bit higher because they wanted to reach championship. So, of course, success and failure is different because their output or the outcome that they were looking to have were two different things, but they got the same thing. And so, picking back on what Giannis was talking about is all the seasons that led up to this was not failure. So I agree with that part because you need to learn these lessons of, okay, we suck this season. Let's draft this guy. Okay, boom. Let's do this and learn this lesson. Okay, we got a better coach. Now the coach knew how to handle the situation. The players know how to handle the situation. So it took this time frame. How many years it took him to get a championship? Like, I think 8 years. So those 8 years were failures because he didn't have the championship, but he learned things throughout that process. And that led to the final ultimate success of winning championship. So I don't know, man. Like I haven't come to a conclusive thought about Giannis's statement, but that's kind of where my mind is right now about it. Because of course you turn your failures into lessons and all that stuff. I agree with that. But at the
I
end of the
think
day,
I think the very concepts of success and failure is so subjective. Everybody can have their own definition.
Yeah,
No matter what it says in Webster's or the dictionary, you know what I mean? And he's looking at it long term, strategically, his development as a player and their overall journey, I think, instead of one season. So it depends whether you're looking at it longitudinally, latitudinally. But if he says it's a failure, there's a sort of, if there's an emotional connotation to that, then he's not going to grow. It ends at that point. I failed. But if you have a growth mindset, it's like, we came up short this season. However, it's not a total failure. You either win or you learn, right? It's not necessarily always win or lose. I don't know. It's an interesting discussion, you know.
yeah.
There are no mistakes if there's lessons learned and it makes you better and there's growth from it. Definitely.
Yeah, I think the whole, like you said, the perspective of what failure and success is and how do you define success and failure is the key thing. So that's an ongoing philosophical debate that people can have and never really come to a conclusion to. So, but like you said, I think growth mindset is the key to where you learn from everything, the good and the bad. But I think most athletes do need to adapt that growth mindset because we get so caught up in basically our lives are attached to the win or the loss.
Oh,
So,
without a doubt. And America, it's different.
mhm,
I've been to London twice in the last 6 months doing soccer stuff, and they have ties there. It's outcome based, and it's even more high stakes because they have promotion and relegation. So there are 20 teams in the Premier League. The bottom three get kicked out of the league. So it'd be like in the NBA, the bottom three end up in the G League, where they lose hundreds of millions of dollars every year, and they have to earn promotion back. So in the top three in the G League would come up every year. So you'd have, I don't even know G League teams anymore. The Reno Bighorns might make the NBA one year, and then a Creddy team will get kicked out. So it's interesting how that works.
hmm. That'll be a very interesting thing if the NBA tried to adapt that.
I think it would be great. You wouldn't have teams tanking at the end of the season
No.
for lottery picks if you know you're going to lose $200 million or whatever it is by being demoted or being relegated. To me, that is failure. Now, there's no debate there, right? You get thrown out of the NBA and go to the G League because you've been relegated, or the Reno Rhino Horn, whatever they call them, get promoted. That's success.
Hmm. That's interesting. I have to think about that one more.
It's a great concept. I wish we would do it over here. It's really cool.
I think that they would have to remodel because it's basically a development system to get players to move up. I don't know how actually effective that is, but that's
Yeah.
another conversation for another day. But that could be a whole different strategy that the NBA could look into.
Well, the interesting thing, the bottom 3 or 5 teams in the Premier League, now they're at the end of their season. It's about to be over in a few games. They're playing their butts off right now. You don't see that in the NBA with the bottom teams. They're playing just to stay up, to stay afloat. So it just made me think of the whole success and failure thing. It's a whole different level.
That's crazy. Let's tie this into the parenting thing. Um, you see a lot of times players get so pressured from their parents to have stats and to have, success. But a lot of times the player is even if they're not performing to the standards that the parent has, they're having fun and they're enjoying the process of, whatever things happen. They enjoy this team or whatever. What can the player do about that? The parent has so much pressure on them to perform at their stakes, and they're not reaching their level of success that the parent has for them. What can they do about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I get contacted by a lot of parents because I work with individual players, like over Zoom or whatever. Could be high school, could be college. Um, my kid is really stressed, and my kid is doing this. I had one mom contacted me a while ago. Her kid was a top like golfer, but he'd been really on the collegiate level, been really stressed out, and I don't know what to do with him. I'm working with him. I'm like, are you a golf coach? No. Have you ever played? Did you play on the collegiate level like him? No. What can I do? And I said, well, the first thing you can do other than hiring me, quit talking to him about golf. Just be a parent. Love your kid unconditionally. Well, I don't know if I can. What are you talking about? Well, after a golf match, instead of asking him how he did or critiquing his swing or his putt, why don't you say, hey, did you have fun? Like, or good job, win or lose. Parents should focus on being parents. It's a lot like coaches. You have to emotionally validate your child. And if they see it as being transactional, your love is based, even if it's not, but if it's their misperception that they see your love is based on their performance, you're messing up your kid psychologically. Above and beyond basketball, it's messing them up. Same thing with coaches. Coaches have to emotionally validate their players. I was at a Zoom with a coach that I work with earlier this morning, and he was like, well, what do you mean? I don't want to be soft on them. I'm like, it's not about being soft. It's listening to them and holding their opinions and their thoughts and their feelings is valid and making sure that they know that. You don't always have to agree with them and give in to them, but you got to validate them as human beings. I'm not so sure what kids can do. That's a great question, to have their parents not do that. Maybe just talk to them and say, this is how I feel. When you do this, I feel like it's all. I worked with one kid at Memphis years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago. All-American, great kid, destined for the NBA. Started hating basketball because of his dad. His dad rode him so hard. Ended up not even playing after college. It's a shame.
So the parents probably thinking, well, Greg, I want my kid to be a college player. I want them to make it to the pros. If I don't critique them and coach them, how are they going to get there?
And that's such a misnomer. And I would tell the parents, I've worked with so many athletes, high-level athletes over the years, and most of them that do succeed have supporting parents, but parents that aren't overbearing, that ends up putting too much pressure on them. And if they're mentally tight, they're going to play physically tight. Mm-hmm. It's not going to go well. They're not going to play well.
So it's not that you're mentally weak. It's just that you don't really understand where your mental toughness is. You don't understand where exactly you're mentally strong at. It's even crazy. You probably don't even really understand what mental toughness actually is. And I don't blame you, because usually we just have coaches yelling at us and fussing at us saying, hey, be mentally tough. You're being weak right now. You're being soft right now. But it's not the full scope, and it doesn't give you any true understanding of what mental toughness is and how you can get better at it. And so I'm here to help you guys out. Because just imagine I gave you a pill right here in my hand. Just imagine. And within that pill, it gave you just a epiphany where you just brain just blew up and you're just like, oh my goodness, you got so much better understanding. Now your game just grows by 10x and you just a whole different person now. Bro, I got the pill for you right here. Never fear. B's Mental Toughness Playbook ebook is here. You feel me? So in this whole little playbook I got for you, just small little ebook, it breaks down the mental game of understanding what mental toughness is in different areas of what your mental toughness is and how you can actually grow it and get better and enhance it. So, look in the link, look in the description, and to go ahead and purchase it and do yourself a favor by just understanding what mental toughness actually is and also understanding how you can actually grow it and what you can do to get better at it. So, just the mental toughness playbook, small little ebook. I'm just trying to tell you, hey, can't say I didn't warn you. The next thing they might say is, well, I look at social media and I love him. LeVar Ball, he did this, that, and the third with his kid. So I want to be a LeVar Ball and be there for my kid and discipline them or whatever. What about that?
It's interesting. I think LeVar's kids were going to be good. No disrespect to LeVar, whether he was in the picture or not, they were going to be who they are. Outstanding players, And I actually think he ended up turning a lot of people off to his kids. I'm not saying he was right and wrong in the way that he did things, but, I'm not quite sure of the 3 kids, how many are playing now in the NBA? 1? Is that right? 2?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm confident they would have been there even without him, Mm-hmm. They got mom's genes. Mom was the athlete, right? Biology is a big part of it,
Yeah.
No disrespect for LeVar. If he's watching, I don't want him to come after me. I don't want to mess with him.
If he watches this, I will appreciate that, LeVar. So
I'll come back on and apologize to him if he's watching. We'll do that.
Hey, that sounds good to me. I appreciate that.
But I respect someone like him that loves his kids. And I mean, look at Venus and Serena and their dad. Look how Richard Williams was. I mean, arguably, would they have gotten where they are without him? No, probably not. Might be a little bit of a different situation, but I get it. But there's a psychological toll to that too. So yes, they may end up being Wimbledon champions or NBA superstars, but it's hard to untangle that at the end of the day and separate from dad and coach. It's difficult, and it comes out messy usually. It's a rare individual that can coach his kids and still have a good, healthy, functional relationship with them,
I think that's probably one of the hardest managing jobs to do is to coach and parent a kid. That's like,
Oh, yeah.
how do you know when to turn the switch off or turn the knob to more coach or more dad or more mom? Like that's
I wouldn't want to. Yeah, I think back. I'm older than you. I know you know who this is, obviously, but Bobby Knight kicking his own kid during a game.
Yeah.
Turn around, whew. And then there's the whole reverse psychological thing I think that coaches get into. I've got to be rougher to my kid, or I've got to show I have to go overboard not to show favoritism to the other players, So it's tough. I think it's tough.
Yeah, that's a situation I don't think I ever want to truly be a part of. I think I'll probably build a foundation and then hand them off and let whoever else take care of the job because I don't want to.
That's a smart thing to do. And I see parents again that are well intentioned. They just make mistakes with it. Like yesterday, there's an individual that I work with on a team. A year or two ago, he transferred to another school playing, and now he's going to another one. And I already know it's not a good fit, and it's a horrible, horrible decision. And, parents are thinking maybe about NIL money. I'm not really sure what the thought process is behind it. But I think sometimes when it's your own kid, you don't handle things objectively. You don't talk to other people about it. It's difficult. I like your approach. Maybe coach them when they're young, and then when it gets serious time, kind of hand it off.
Yeah, I just because I'm too loving and I'll be too caring to if I best to have a kid, I'd be like, yo, I just want to love you and be dad. Of course, I have my critiques and stuff, but I don't want to lose. I'd rather lose coach before I lose dad.
Yeah,
So
no doubt. No doubt. And you look at some of these, I'm thinking of primarily, I can't remember their names, but well-known female tennis players who are just messed up from it, you know?
yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think that a lot of parents kind of cross that boundary and they go overboard because you see the King Richard and got a whole movie made after him now. So it's like, oh, that's the right way to go. But it's like you don't know, like you said, the after effects mentally. You don't know the long term tolls, and maybe you aren't the parent to do that, or maybe your kids aren't the kids to do that. So I don't know how to really manage that. Like I'm not a parent, so I can't speak too heavily on it. But outside looking in, I've worked with kids, and they still have a good relationship with parents, but things have to change because they feel the toll and they're not performing. Like you said, when they mentally they're tight, physically it shows up and the game goes downhill. So
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, it's better not to coach your own kids if you can. And if they're good enough, they're going to be found. Every college coach I've ever worked with said they're going to find the players. They don't care where it is.
mhm.
Small town, JUCO, wherever, they'll find them. They don't need the parent making memes with the 12 final middle school decision on a. They don't need that. That's just too much. That's a turnoff, you know? I know that's the third time I've mentioned that, but.
Nah, that's funny.
Well, and the kid's name is, I hope he's not watching, but it was the nickname that the dad gave him was Mashad the God on there. So there you go. There you go. So
Interesting.
to
Okay.
be an 11-year-old God has to be pretty cool, I guess. But poor kid, you know. So
So how do you feel about the whole phenom practice and kids being hyped up so early and they're like, oh, he's an eighth grade phenom. He's NBA ready now. I feel like he's going to be an NBA pro. How do you feel about the ranking system and all of that? Do you think
I
that affects them?
I think it's kind of fraught for disaster. I've seen so many over the years, like you have, that they never. The stars mean very little. Like I look at someone that I've worked for, like Shaka Smart. You know, I used to work with him in Marquette, and he'd get these guys that were 2 and 3 stars at VCU, and even at Marquette, he doesn't carry a lot of 5 stars, and he coaches them up, and they do a great job. I don't know. I just think, and also I think psychologically, when a kid starts thinking at a really young age that he's the best thing since sliced bread, it's hard for them to get better. How many times have these phenoms not matured or grown into the players that we thought they would be? I think it's more times than not, you know.
Hmm. How do you feel about players being held back? Because you said you were a principal, and I'm pretty sure you might have seen this too. But a parent holding a kid back for whatever reason.
Yeah, at the school that I worked at, we didn't do that. They either passed or they failed. It was a real high academic school, great in sports too. But there is a school in town that I knew of that would do that. It was a kindergarten through 6th grade school, and they called it their red shirt year. Like in 6th grade, they'd hold them back. I mean, I don't know. I think it's dumb. I don't see any sense in it. A lot of parents do it, but
I think it's becoming.
it's their priorities, or their priorities in athletics or academics. Um, you know, in the lifespan, the athletic part, playing a sport is going to be a very small slice of it. You know.
Mm. Yeah, I think that it's becoming more and more popular. I think a major part of that is the athletics part of it. I want my kid to be ready to play at this level, whatever. And because they're so young, they feel like they're behind. But when I was growing up, that's a benefit if you the youngest guy on the court playing with a whole bunch of older
Yeah,
people. Like,
I agree with you. I'd rather them come up that way. You know,
yeah,
I 100% agree with you. If there were other reasons, like academically, they need to do it, or they're too immature from a socialization perspective, I'm all for it. But solely just so they can be better at a sport, and especially in basketball now, it's tough on the freshmen. On kids that are going into college, it's tough because of the transfer portal in college basketball. It's tough. Like,
Yeah.
you could hold them back 2 or 3 years. It might not make a difference, you know? And there's the other side of it too. Like, you know, I was working with Memphis and Penny Hardaway, like I said earlier, and we had DeAndre Williams, someone I worked with quite a bit, I think 27 years old. And there was a lot of, like, every time a game was on, they would talk about oldest player in college basketball. And I even heard from some college coaches, the NBA doesn't like guys that old and stuff like that. It's weird, you know. It's weird. The whole age thing. It's interesting.
That's crazy because that's all what I am. So this is like,
Yeah.
I can imagine still being in college playing basketball right now. That's, I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah. Definitely.
I do want to kind of round out on this point. We talked about earlier the lack of focus and how, you know, players are distracted. So how can we get back geared to being a little more focused and increasing our attention span?
So a couple different things you could do, and I would say the most important is get into meditation. Learn how to meditate. And actually, I didn't come on here to plug it, but I have a book that I wrote on it. It has a lot of good basketball stuff in it too. It's called Slow Your Roll. And it talks about meditation from an introductory perspective, how to learn how to do it a little bit every day. Just time spent learning to focus, learning to refocus your mind when you get distracted, and a little bit of time every day with your thoughts and emotions. It's nothing magical or mystical or religious. It's just learning how to focus and learning how to refocus and being okay with sitting with your thoughts. Because most of the time we're not okay with that. We pick up our phone when we start thinking, or we want to intentionally distract ourselves or numb ourselves. So I would say get into meditation. It's the best thing that you can do for your mind.
So can you give me a psychology 101 dumbed down version of what meditation is? Because I feel like that's gotten too popular to where it's being glossed up to be this mystical, magical thing. But can you just like simplify it?
Meditation is you start out, I would say, by sitting every morning for 5 minutes and you focus on one solitary thing, like your breathing, like the way that you're breathing. Your stomach rises and falls with every in breath and out breath. And then when you get distracted and you start thinking and you've noticed that you've been distracted, that in and of itself is the meditation. Then you go back to your point of focus. And what that does is, over time, not only does that build up your focus and your attention span, it builds your self-awareness. It's a form of self-observation where you learn how to see your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and your thought pattern. Instead of acting on autopilot, it puts a little space between stimulus and response, if that makes sense.
I've heard it as a focus tool. I never heard it being in combination with self-awareness tool. I like that.
Oh, big time. That's the whole, for me, that's the primary objective, is it builds that self-awareness. If you have self-awareness, you have a little more control of your thoughts and emotions, because you can catch them before you act. Instead of reacting, you respond.
So you have any other good tools that an athlete can use to gain?
I would say start with that one. It is the greatest one.
Okay. So I know you said you didn't come on here for it, but go ahead and plug your book, man. Let the people know how.
Yeah, I didn't just bring it here. I always have it on my desk. It's Slow Your Roll, Mindfulness for Fast Times. Will Wade, the former LSU coach, wrote the foreword to it. He's at McNeese State now. And I think you can, again, get it on Amazon, get it on Kindle, hardback, paperback. I think everybody would enjoy it. Some good basketball stuff, if nothing else.
gonna have to check it out, man, and see what it's like. But covered a lot. Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on and talk about?
No, I enjoyed talking to you. This was great fun.
Oh yeah, this is fun, man. I enjoyed it. I'm nerd about this stuff, so it's fun to like converse with other people about it. I'm usually like in myself and in my head, so it's nice to have like a professional put me on game about stuff. So I love this.
I come back anytime. Love to do it again.
That sounds good. So before we get out of here, I have two quick questions I want to ask you before we get out of here. So number one, being on giving people their flowers. So who is someone that you've seen? You've been around, a lot of different coaches and players, but who's someone you want to give their flowers to and be like, man, I see you doing your thing. I respect the grind. So here's some flowers to give you some recognition behind what you've done.
Oh, wow. There's so many. I guess I'd say Will Wade, even though he's a controversial figure. He's been really good to me. I've been with him every team he's ever been on since he started coaching, from Chattanooga to VCU to LSU. And now, like I said, we're going to McNeese State. Um, Also, Ed McLaughlin, the VCU athletic director, has been really good to me too. So many of these guys have. I love Penny at Memphis. I don't want to leave anybody out, but those three would be great. So thanks for giving me that opportunity.
Hey, I love doing it because everybody feels that they're a little slept on. So it's nice to have a little bit of a recognition for the work we put in. So
Thank you.
that's why
I appreciate it. It's good seeing you.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So before we get to the last question, please, people, make sure you subscribe along to the YouTube channel, follow along on all audio platforms. Just simple, easy. Have a great guy like this, you might as well come support because I have more great people coming on after him. Find me on social media at BeBall Jones. That's BE-Ball Jones. And of course, you can follow our great guest on Instagram, Greg_Grabber_. And of course, go to the website, www.greggrabber.com. You can check the book out there. You can figure out how to work with him in capacity and just get in touch with him because he's been great. He's giving me a lot of games now, so why not support him in that way? So before we get out of here, the last question I want to have for you is, can you give me a story or a lesson, something that you've learned from one of the coaches you've worked with that give you something that was about basketball or about the sport, but the impact is you way bigger than that, and it's like a life lesson that you learned?
That's a tough one because every time I'm there, I spend a lot of time in not only working with the players and the coaches, but sitting in practices as well. Every one of them is really good at what they do, but they all kind of do it in a different way. Just overall, I would say probably Penny Hardaway more than any other. I've never seen him or any coach on that level love up the players the way that he does it. He's tough on them. He demands a lot, but he cares about them as people. And it's just kind of, it's beautiful to see that.
That's a lesson I'm working on with myself, how to coach them hard but still love them hard. So I think all people need to learn about that. So
Without a doubt. It's a delicate balance.
yeah, so that's it, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Greg, for coming on and sharing some time with me. But that's it, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This was fun. I love these interviews. I love doing this. But that's it, guys. See you next week.
Thank you so much.
Hey, relax. It's okay. Listen, I understand that your goal is so big that it just feels daunting. It just feels overwhelming. Like you're trying to get to the NBA, you're trying to get to WNBA, you're trying to play D1 college ball. I understand sometimes that feels like a lot. But listen, you're not gonna make that jump from now tomorrow to be to the league or be in D1. So let's just slow down and focus on the whole journey. Enjoy where you're at right now, but don't get too comfortable. You have to still keep working. You still have to make some type of progress and still keep growing. All you gotta do is think about this. The minimum I can do today is get 1% better, you winning. Because there are some people gonna take a step backwards. There are some people that's gonna stop and just be equal. But technically you're not gonna be equal because I'm getting better than you, so it means you fell backwards now. And so you gotta get 1% better. Because it's a slow grind from where you're at now to where you want to get to. You don't have to worry about taking over the world in one day. Just take over step by step, one piece at a time, 1% better. It's a whole journey. Okay. You got this goal that's just hanging over you, weighing you down. But this goal, the end destination, It's not going to change. So you have to appreciate the journey and taking steps to get there. You're a marathon runner, but the whole marathon is about focusing on that next step. So I need you to go ahead and look at whatever one you want. You can get this one, one of the other ones. But I need you to get this reminder for you. Get you a hoodie, a t-shirt, whichever one, as a reminder that progress is my only goal. And progress don't mean I'm perfect. Progress don't mean I'm there. Progress means I'm getting better. Because better and better adds up to being the best you that you can be. But the best is not existing because you're always going to get better. So get you this peaceful reminder right here to say, hey, all I gotta do is be a little bit better, 1% better, and I'll get to that goal at some point. So remember, it's about the entire journey and not just the end goal, because progress is the only goal.